summer. Sure, but there's a lot of hot, and there are consequences. An update on the progress of the heat dome and wildfires blackening the ground out west. In Washington, the heat upon the Boeing CEO testifying before Congress. We'll check in on the fortunes of the troubled airplane maker. A little over a week from now, the presidential candidates will debate. The most important part of that job? Keeping Americans safe. We'll talk to former acting CIA Director Michael Morrell about the terror threats that he sees out there. Plus, a look at the issues in the key presidential state of Pennsylvania. A year-long investigation into the harm from hair relaxers and what that tells us about the healthcare system, and how the Boston Celtics pulled one off for the record books. The Daily Report starts in a moment. Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin our report with President Biden's new proposal to provide legal protection to nearly 500,000 undocumented migrants in America. The plan would protect from deportation undocumented spouses and children of U.S. citizens. It also makes it easier for them to apply for work visas and lawful permanent residency. During his announcement Tuesday, the president insisted that despite the vital role Hispanic voters will play in his campaign and the salience of the border issue in the campaign, that he had other motivations.
I'm not interested in playing politics with the border or immigration. I'm interested in fixing it. I said it before. And I'll say it again today. I will work with anyone to solve these problems. That's my responsibility as president. That's our responsibility as Americans.
CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez joins us now from San Antonio, Texas. Camilo, what requirements are necessary for migrants to qualify for this new program, and when would it take effect?
Hi, John. This will be the biggest immigration program for undocumented immigrants here in the U.S. since that DACA policy that, as you just underscored, turned 12 years old this past weekend. And this will allow the undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens to apply for work permits and deportation protections as long as they have lived here in the U.S. for at least 10 years and as long as they pass background checks. People who have serious criminal records or who pose a threat to national security will not qualify. But perhaps more importantly, John, this will also give these eligible immigrants a more streamlined process for seeking U.S. citizenship and also U.S. residency. Right now, an immigrant who marries a U.S. citizen, John, is eligible for a green card, a permanent resident status. But many of these immigrants who have lived in the country unlawfully first have to leave the country, come back legally, and then get that green card. But in that process, many of them face a 10-year ban from the U.S. because, again, they lived here in the U.S. illegally for some time. This will prevent that from happening and will also allow these people to get a green card and ultimately U.S. citizenship without leaving the U.S. So it is a major policy shift.
One of the criticisms that's already come out is that this is amnesty, a word we always hear in these debates, and some Republicans are suggesting it's a move to turn unauthorized migrants into voters ahead of the election. Give us your response to that.
Well, John, you can certainly have legitimate, valid criticisms and policy disagreements when it comes to this announcement. People are entitled to their own opinions on immigration policy, and we obviously have a very heated, polarizing debate on immigration here in the U.S. But the fact of the matter is that this will only benefit people, John, who are already on paper eligible for green cards because they are married to U.S. citizens. It will just allow them to undergo that process here in the U.S. without having to leave the country and potentially be banned for several years from returning to the U.S. So again, it is a streamlined process where people want to get work permits, but also to get a green card here in the U.S. It is also very important to note, John, that only U.S. citizens can vote in federal elections. Green card holders cannot vote, and those permanent residents must wait 5 years in that status before applying for U.S. citizenship. So this policy will not convert any immigrant into an eligible voter anytime soon. This will happen in several years, of course, but not anytime soon.
Now to other challenges which might come in the form of an actual legal challenge. What what might this policy face in the courts?
Well, John, we can certainly expect Republican-led states, including Texas, to challenge the legality of this action by President Biden. Those states have sued over virtually every single immigration action by President Biden, and we should expect that to remain the case and to continue with this new policy. The Biden administration, we are told, is certainly preparing for a lawsuit, but they will argue in court, John, that they have the legal authority to do this, and that the U.S. has operated a very similar program for military families since the Bush administration. They will also argue that they are taking unilateral action, just like they did at the U.S.-Mexico border 2 weeks ago, because of congressional inaction on immigration. Congress, as you know, we have to say this multiple times, has not acted on this issue in any significant way since the 1990s.
Camilo Montoya Galvez in San Antonio. Thank you as always, Camilo.
Thanks.
Like swimming pools and cookouts, another sure sign of summer is the small talk question, hot enough for you? Millions of Americans are susceptible to that inquiry for the first time this season as the heat wave we've all been talking about arrives in much of the land. Some 70 million Americans are under extreme heat advisories or warnings across 21 states. Right now, the heat is pronounced in the Midwest, but it's headed to New England by the end of the week. This week, around 270 million people could see temperatures at or above 90 degrees. Cooling centers like this one in Detroit have opened. Heat is the leading cause of weather-related deaths, according to the World Health Organization. Officials are urging people to stay indoors and drink plenty of water in the affected areas. The heat is being felt most acutely in cities along the East Coast. In New York City, highs topped out around 80s. In the 80s. In Boston, the entire city is under a heat advisory Tuesday. Highs ended up peaking around 93 degrees, and in Philadelphia, temperatures leveled off around 92 degrees in the afternoon. In the Southwest, fires are burning. In southern New Mexico, crews are battling the South Fork fire, which has grown to more than 8 square miles. That's roughly the size of 140 football fields, or 1/3 the size of Manhattan. And in California, the Post fire has scorched more than 15,600 acres and forced evacuations of more than 1,000 people. Our Carter Evans has the latest.
Well, good evening, John. Firefighters are making progress on the Post fire here outside Los Angeles. That is I-5 behind me. It's moving smoothly again. This fire is holding steady right now at about 15,000 acres. Firefighters have it about 25% contained. We are still under a high wind red flag warning right now, but that is set to expire tonight. It is a different story, however, in New Mexico. Towering smoke and flames are filling the sky over the mountain town of Ruidoso. A pair of fires converged in the area, scorching about 19,000 acres in less than 24 hours. Now, evacuees say that sheriff's deputies were driving through the streets telling people to leave their homes right away. Don't take anything, just go, they said. That led to a traffic jam as people fled the main road out of town. More than 7,000 people there are under evacuation orders. So far, it's estimated that about 500 structures have burned, and firefighters still do not have control of that fire. John?
Carter Evans, thank you. Tuesday, Boeing's outgoing president and CEO Dave Calhoun answered questions on Capitol Hill about the aerospace company's commitment to safety. The hearing follows 3 whistleblower allegations claiming Boeing did not address known issues and retaliated against the employees who raised them.
I understand the gravity of Boeing's role in upholding the integrity of aerospace safety in our industry. Our culture is far from perfect, but we are taking action and we are making progress. And we know, as America's premier aerospace manufacturer, this is what you and the flying public have every right to expect from us.
For more on this, we are joined by Sharon Turlip. She's an aerospace reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Thank you so much for joining us, Sharon. How did Boeing go from being the gold standard in the aviation industry to being in this condition they are in now, where things are so problematic?
Sure. I mean, that's a big question with a lot of answers. And if you talk to people at Boeing, talk to people who watch Boeing, it's everything from a shift in culture. Is it shareholder focused? Is it, a decision to outsource a lot of the business? And if you talk to Boeing's executives today, they'll say there's been a lot of challenges around COVID. There's labor issues. supplier issues. So there's a lot, and all of these things are elements of what's happening, inside and outside factors.
And there are these three whistleblowers who've come forward alleging that Boeing has failed to address these concerns that they raised. What did we learn from the new allegations? And does that tell us something about tiny little spots inside the country, inside the company, or does it go to this larger cultural question about Boeing that might be part of that enormous first question I asked you?
Sure. I mean, each of the whistleblowers, they have very different issues. Some are engineering arguments, and some are allegations of actually covering up problems. But one thing that seems to be consistent is the idea that when they said, hey, there's something wrong here, they were not received well, they feared retaliation, and that culture of not being able to speak up and bring problems forward is something that has been a theme through all of this.
The CEO, Dave Calhoun, acknowledged on Tuesday that, in fact, employees had been, or that these whistleblowers had been retaliated against. That seemed kind of extraordinary that he sort of admitted that. And what's the fix for that?
Yeah, he talked about, he did acknowledge that there have been people who have been reprimanded for retaliating against whistleblowers. And he talked about setting the tone at management that you need to come forward. But I don't know, I mean, it certainly wasn't answered and probably can't be answered right now if that change has rippled through the entire company or how long that would take.
Is it possible to know, Sharon, what stepping aside from this hearing, kind of what the situation is like at Boeing? I mean, are they still in the mode of trying to find all the problems so they can get to solving them? Or have they put systems in place that might begin to solve some of these things that have been identified?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both. I mean, they literally have entire lines of airplanes that are being fixed. So as opposed to new production, there's physical repairs going on, and then there's all the work going on to repair the culture and put in place new practices. At the same time, they are building planes. There's huge demand for airplanes, and they are trying to get themselves ready to develop the next generation plane. So I think they're trying to both conduct business while fixing the problems that have not yet been resolved.
The old cliche, trying to fix the airplane while flying it. Sharon Turlip with the Wall Street Journal. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you.
Still to come, conflicting reports. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims the U.S. is withholding weapons, but the Biden administration says that's not the case. More details ahead. Plus, from concerns about abroad to those concerns at home, we'll speak to the former acting CIA director about the terror threat level in the United States. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the United States is withholding weapons from his country. In a video message Tuesday, Netanyahu, in English, criticized the Biden administration over bottlenecks in arms transfers. Since May, President Biden has delayed delivering some heavy bombs over concerns about civilian deaths in Gaza. When asked about it Tuesday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that was the only pause in place. The White House press secretary said they had no idea what Netanyahu was talking about. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has started halting its offensive during daytime hours in southern Gaza. The pause is meant to get aid into the Strip, where tens of thousands are facing famine. Chris Livesay has more details from Tel Aviv. Chris?
Well, it's hardly the ceasefire that the Biden administration has been pushing for, but the hope for that tactical pause is more aid for the people of Gaza. Now, so far, figures show there's been a moderate increase, but also some chaos. Take a look at this footage from our CBS News team in the Rafah area. UN aid trucks filing in on that 7.5-mile stretch of road where that pause is happening. You can also see looting. Palestinians taking pallets of aid like mattresses directly from the trucks, a reflection of the dire security and humanitarian situation in the Strip. Meanwhile, north of here, a top advisor to President Biden was in Lebanon today trying to prevent a full-blown war with Hezbollah at the border with Israel, where hostilities have been heating up. Amos Hochstein is warning that an escalation could lead to a direct confrontation with Hezbollah's backers, Iran. Remember, back in April, Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles at Israel all at once. It was the first time Iran directly attacked Israel. The Iron Dome defenses largely protected it. But the U.S. is warning another attack could be even bigger, too big to completely strike down. John?
Chris Livesay in Tel Aviv, thank you. Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in North Korea Tuesday for his first visit to the country in 24 years. Ahead of his arrival, Putin thanked North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for supporting his actions in Ukraine. He also said the two nations will work closely to overcome U.S.-led sanctions. At a briefing in January, John Kirby at the White House said that North Korea sent weapons to Russia in September and that they were used against Ukraine December 30th and January 2nd. Both countries have denied weapons transfers, which would violate UN resolutions that Russia previously supported. Unprecedented and devastating. That's how the UN is describing a new report on the increased levels of death and violence children and women around the world faced in 2023. Armed conflicts in Gaza, Haiti, Sudan, and more have killed at least 11,649 children last year, a 35% increase from 2022. That's about 15 kids killed every day. According to the UN, the overall number of civilian deaths increased 72% in 2023. The UN Human rights chief blamed warring parties for, quote, pushing beyond the boundaries of what is acceptable and legal. Since October, FBI Director Christopher Wray has appeared before Congress 8 times. On every occasion, he raised alarms over the ongoing threats facing the United States. He did so again earlier this month.
We've seen the threat from foreign terrorists rise to a whole nother level after October 7th. We continue to see the cartels push fentanyl and other dangerous drugs. China continues its relentless efforts to steal our intellectual property and most valuable information. And that's just scratching the surface.
My next guest underscores Ray's concerns in a piece for Foreign Affairs. Quote, in the piece, he says the United States faces a serious threat of a terrorist attack in the months ahead. Former CIA acting director and CBS News and senior national security contributor Michael Morell joins me now. Mike, thanks a lot for being with us. Let's just give me your assessment of the whole threat landscape right now.
When you dissect, John, Director Wray's comments over those 8 testimonies, what you see is that the threat falls into 3 categories. The first category are lone wolves already here in the United States, right? American citizens who foreign terrorists might be able to radicalize and to encourage, just through their social media posts and the like, videos where they can radicalize somebody and encourage a lone wolf attack. That's one category. The second category are actually foreign terrorist organizations like ISIS-K, which is the ISIS group in Afghanistan, actually sending operatives to the United States to conduct an attack here the way Al-Qaeda did on 9/11. That's the second category. And then the third category that Director Wray has talked about are nation states, in particular Iran, who have tried to send people here to assassinate a former Trump administration official to get even, right, with our assassination, our killing of Qasem Soleimani, a senior Iranian official, several years ago.
Now, Mike, your assessment of whether intelligence officials and national security officials up and down the line are on the case, recognize these 3 groups and are doing the most they can to address each one of them.
So my assessment is yes, John, but don't forget that the threat from terrorism is competing with some other very significant national security priorities, right? The war in Gaza and how to prevent it from spreading more widely in the Middle East, the war in Ukraine and Ukraine's ability to defend itself against, the Russian threat. And then third is China, right? And our long-term competition with China. And all of that, right, is occurring within the context of political debates about the border and what to do about it, and a very hotly contested election.
So that leads me to my next question, which is, with all of that going on, do you think that all of those countries and actors that you mentioned seek to take advantage of a busy national security apparatus? I mean, do you think they see a moment of opportunity because the plate is so full?
So I don't think so, because terrorist groups have never before tried to impact the outcome of an election. The attack in Madrid a number of years ago, 20-some years ago, did, but that was by a local group, and it was not by a large organization. They go when they're operationally ready. And what's happened in particular with ISIS-K is they have grown in capability. They've successfully conducted attacks in Iran and Moscow. They failed on some attacks in Europe. It looks like they're trying to send people here now. They will go when they're ready, irregardless of our election timetable.
And finally, on that question of the election, one's coming up. What question should we be asking of the candidates, whoever's going to be the next president, to test whether they see things as clearly as you have outlined them?
How do you defend the United States from terrorist organizations who are trying to send people here, in particular through the southern border, which they've now discovered is a vulnerability? And then second is, how do you take the fight to the terrorists so that you degrade them where they are? And how do you, in particular, do that in a place like Afghanistan when we're not there anymore?
Mike Morell, thanks as always, Mike.
Good to be with you, John, always.
A Secret Service agent was robbed at gunpoint over the weekend in California while President Biden was there for a campaign trip. Officials say the agent was coming from work when he was approached in Tustin, a residential community area. It's about an hour Drive southeast of Los Angeles, where the president spent Saturday night at a star-studded fundraiser that raised $30 million for his re-election campaign. Authorities say the agent's bag was stolen and that he did fire his gun during the robbery, but it's unclear if anyone was shot. No one is in custody, but police were able to recover some of the agent's belongings. On Monday, Las Vegas police said they discovered a, quote, mysterious monolith near a peak in the desert. Authorities shared these pictures on social media, saying that the reflective object was spotted close to Gas Peak, a hiking area with a summit of nearly 7,000 feet. It is unknown how it got there. Several similar-looking monoliths have appeared across the world in recent years. Between 2020 and 2021, the unexplainable structures were discovered in Utah, Florida, Colorado, and California. The mysterious monoliths have been seen as far as the UK, Canada, Romania, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Turkey. Money may not buy happiness, or so the saying claims, but can it buy success? President Biden is hoping it will, at least in his home state of Pennsylvania. Coming up, we'll take a look at the race in the key battleground state and the issues that matter most to voters there. You're streaming the Daily Report.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team. Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to the Daily Report. I'm John Dickerson. Here are some additions to our top stories. President Biden announced an immigration plan Tuesday to offer legal status to 500,000 undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens. The policy will allow these immigrants to apply for deportation protections and work permits if they have lived in the country for at least 10 years, along with other requirements. The New York Court of Appeals has refused to hear former President Trump's appeal of the gag order in his criminal hush money case. The order bars Trump from commenting publicly about people involved in the trial and the judge's own family. However, Trump violated the order 10 times before and during the trial. Pop star Justin Timberlake was arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated on Long Island Tuesday morning. Court documents say police pulled the singer over after he ran a stop sign and did not keep to the right side of the road. Timberlake reportedly told the officer he had only one martini. The 2024 election will likely come down to how 7 battleground states vote: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, and President Biden's home state of Pennsylvania. According to Ad Impact, more than $21 million has been spent on campaign ads so far in the Keystone State, more than any other battleground. Biden has already visited Pennsylvania at least 7 times this election cycle. Donald Trump at least 4. Biden has visited no state more in his presidency than Pennsylvania in this battleground group. CBS News Pittsburgh's money and politics editor John Delano joins me now. John, give us the nickel tour of Pennsylvania.
Well, it's good. First, it's good to be with you again, John. The nickel tour of Pennsylvania is that we're right in the thick of it. The door to the White House really runs through Pennsylvania. You're going to have to open this door, win this state, in order to win the presidency for the next 4 years. And we are being inundated by these campaign ads. If you don't live in one of the battleground states, you're not seeing the ferociousness between the Biden campaign, the Trump campaign, and their surrogates, the independent PACs, political action committees that are running these ads. You cited a figure there, $20 million on ads in Pennsylvania. That's what's already been spent. But in Pittsburgh alone, they've booked over $50 million towards the end of this campaign. And that's likely to go higher in the weeks ahead. So we are getting inundated, as I say, and a lot of people are pretty sick of these ads because, for heaven's sakes, it's June.
Right.
We're not even at Labor Day yet.
Right. Although you can vote earlier than it used to be in the old days. But let me ask you this, John. What do you know? Sure. What do you see about on the ground? I mean, number of campaign offices. Is there a footprint that's visible to see?
Well, there is a footprint for Joe Biden. He has opened, I believe, 28 offices across the Commonwealth already. We've seen one office, I believe, opened by Donald Trump over in the Philadelphia area, none so far in Pittsburgh. So the ground campaign is really Joe Biden at the moment. It has not been Donald Trump. Trump is visible with signs. He has more signs out there in the sense that people have resurrected. I see some Trump Pence signs around in southwestern Pennsylvania. And of course, we're fertile territory. There's no surprise why former President Trump had an interview with me a couple of weeks ago as a local journalist. That's a little unusual, but he knows, as does Joe Biden, how important southwestern Pennsylvania will be to the win for the state. So in terms of physical presence, you've noted already how these guys are coming back and they're going to keep coming back. For Joe Biden, we're close. It's a 40-minute helicopter ride or Air Force One flight up from D.C. to Philly. So it's really easy to get to. Actually, Pittsburgh is closer to Washington than we are to Philadelphia. Kind of interesting.
John, you and I talked before about the U.S. Steel purchase by a Japanese company. President Biden has blocked that. President Biden's also, the infrastructure bill has a lot of projects in the state, using the power of the office. Is that obvious? Are voters talking about that? Is it,
It's a great question, John. It really is, because the connection is not really there. We see the construction, we see the work that's going on. It's all around us. The yellow and orange cones that get in our way. But do people really connect it to Joe Biden and the infrastructure bill? I don't think so. And I think a lot of people think that, bringing home the bacon is what the other politicians, the U.S. senators and the congressmen and those folks do. I don't think they necessarily relate it to the presidential campaign. And let's face it, when they're ribbon cuttings, Republicans who voted against these infrastructure bills are just as likely to show up to cut the ribbon as the Democrats are. So it's I just don't think it's penetrated yet. And I think you're right to point it out, because I think if you're going to run a successful campaign, Biden's people have to make it very clear that the reason not only are these projects going on, but they're employing union workers, union workers that have used to vote Democrat who are now voting for Donald Trump.
And very quickly, John, you mentioned the used to have, it was a state that had gone for the Democratic presidential candidate since '88. Then Trump wins it in 2016. You've watched the state. Where do you see the change in what used to be a reliably blue state?
Well, let's just take a look at registration, voter registration figures, John. If we go back to 2010, Barack Obama was president. Democrats outnumbered Republicans in Pennsylvania by 1.2 million. 1.2 million voters. Today, the Democratic lead is 400,000. So it's really been cut. Now, one analysis is that these are Democrats who were voting Republican, and they've finally gone home to their Republican Party. And Pennsylvania, if you win, the last person to win, a governor to win by over 1 million votes was Governor Bob Casey decades ago. In Pennsylvania, you win an election by a couple 100,000 votes, it's a landslide. So I don't think, I'm not sure what the numbers mean exactly, except to suggest that not only are Democrats far fewer than they once were, but independents are now well over 1 million in Pennsylvania, and they're going to make the difference on Election Day.
Pennsylvania is an important state, which means we're lucky enough to be coming back to you at probably pretty soon. John Delano, thanks a lot, John.
Anytime, John Dickerson. Anytime.
Thank you so much. As expected, Senate Republicans blocked a bill Tuesday that would ban bump stocks for guns. Only one no vote was needed to block it. Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer helped introduce the bipartisan bill after the Supreme Court struck down a Trump-era ban on the device last week. Bump stocks are attachments that can be added to semi-automatic rifles that allow the user to fire bullets at a near continuous rate, nearly at the rate of a machine gun. Before the failed vote, Democratic Senator Martin Heinrich, who co-sponsored the bill, explained his reason for the legislation.
There is literally no legitimate use for a bump stock. There's no law enforcement application for a bump stock. There's no military application for a bump stock. There's no self-defense application for a bump stock. These things are like tailor-made for mass shootings.
Bump stocks were originally banned after one was used in the 2017 Las Vegas concert shooting that killed 60 people and injured 400 more, making it America's deadliest mass shooting. The Education Department says 2 universities failed to protect students from anti-Semitic harassment during campus protests against the Israel-Hamas war. The Office of Civil Rights said it found no evidence that the City University of New York or Michigan University complied with its Title VI requirement to end hostile environments on campus. Protests on college campuses were held nationwide, with students calling on their universities to divest from Israel and stop doing business with companies with ties to the country. Some of the demonstrations did get chaotic. As of Tuesday evening, there are more than 100 investigations into institutions for complaints of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia connected to the protests. As we reported Monday, Maryland Governor Wes Moore pardoned more than 175,000 marijuana convictions in the state. The executive order affects misdemeanor charges for people who were found guilty of possessing small amounts of marijuana. Over 150,000 of the convictions being pardoned are misdemeanors for simple possession of cannabis. Another 18,000 misdemeanors are for the use of possession with intent to use drug paraphernalia. And by doing so, Maryland has now joined several other states and cities at issuing mass pardons for low-level marijuana possession misdemeanors. However, the state does not follow neighboring Virginia in automatically expunging convictions, which means these misdemeanors will stay on public court records. California Governor Gavin Newsom says he wants to severely restrict the use of smartphones in schools. The governor's push comes a day after Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy warned that the threat social media poses to kids and their mental health. Newsom says he wants his Democratic-dominated legislature to pass the restrictions during the current session that ends in August. His proposal would build on legislation he signed in 2019 that let schools ban students from using smartphones on school grounds during school hours, except under certain circumstances. Still to come, we'll speak to the author of a new report about the health risks linked to hair relaxers and why black women are most at risk. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go. You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going.
The clock, it's ticking. Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education.
Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Now to a digest of some foreign news. Lawmakers in Thailand overwhelmingly passed a bill to legalize same-sex marriage. The vote was 130-4, with 18 lawmakers abstaining. The bill requires the king's endorsement before it can become law. If approved, Thailand would become the first Southeast Asian country to allow same-sex marriage. And it would join Taiwan and Nepal as the only parts of all of Asia to have marriage equality. A Ukrainian official tells the Associated Press the country's military struck a Russian oil facility overnight. Images shared by Russia's emergency ministry showed a massive fire near the site of an oil reservoir. The facility is located near Ukraine's southeastern border. Russia says there were no casualties. UK-based environmental group warns extreme heat could pose a danger to athletes ahead of the Paris Olympics. A report published Tuesday warns 2024 could be the hottest summer on record. It recommends scheduling events around the hottest times of the day and providing cooling areas for the athletes. The International Olympic Committee says creating safe conditions is a top priority. The Summer Games begin July 26th. In a joint press conference Tuesday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken and NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg said the next month's summit in Washington will focus on bolstering Ukraine in its ongoing war with Russia. Blinken says that includes addressing the growing concern over North Korea and Iran providing weapons to the Kremlin, and China's unwavering support for Vladimir Putin and his goals.
With regard to China in particular, as I've said before, it can't, on the one hand, say that it wants better relations with countries in Europe, while at the same time fueling the biggest security threat to Europe as a whole since the end of the Cold War. We are very much concerned about this because this is what's keeping the war going. And the fastest way to end the war is for Putin to be disabused of the notion that he can outlast Ukraine and outlast all of Ukraine's supporters.
In other NATO news, the organization says a record 23 of its 32 member nations have already hit their 2% defense spending targets this year in response to Russia's threat to expand its conflict in Europe. That's compared to 2021, before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, when only 6 nations met that goal of spending 2% of GDP. Roughly 90% of Black women have used relaxers at some point in their lives to chemically straighten their hair. For many, it's something they started doing when they were children. New reporting in the New York Times Magazine highlights the severe and often unknown health risks these products can pose. Chemicals in multiple mainstream hair relaxers sold in the U.S. have been linked to reproductive disorders, infertility, and cancers. Despite these threats, the products are largely unregulated and aggressively marketed towards Black women and girls. In her research, contributing writer Linda Villarosa spent more than a year interviewing government officials, health nonprofit workers, university scientists, participants in medical studies, plaintiffs in lawsuits, and more. She found what she calls a preventable health crisis. And Linda joins us now. Linda, welcome. Thank you very much. When you started working on this project, what was the question you were trying to answer? And did you expect that it would take a year of work, or did it take you down roads you weren't expecting?
I did not think it would take quite so long, but what I did was did my reporting through the eyes of Black women epidemiologists who have been looking at this topic for decades. And I started out with the 2022 study that made a link between frequent relaxer use and a more than double risk of uterine cancer in Black women. And then I went backwards. And then I was working on a study with only 4 children who were developing early puberty earlier than 8. And so it was a twisty, turny, long time, but I took my time because I didn't want to cause alarm. I wanted to make sure that the science was really in place.
And the best stories, of course, are the ones that take those twists and turns. And did you find a larger story here about healthcare in America for Black Americans, Black women in particular?
I think the bigger story was about health in America and racial health disparities, whereas we've known for a very long time that Black women are more susceptible to a number of reproductive health disorders, but it was complicated and confusing set of circumstances as to why. So when I was looking at some of these studies, they started making sense when they were making the link between endocrine disruptors, which cause early puberty, and these cancers that can sometimes follow it, and also to fibroid tumors, which are the leading reason for a cesarean section. So that was kind of the thing that I was really trying to follow. I also was very interested in the lack of regulation of these products that are so heavily marketed to Black women and girls, and also the societal pressure of Black women for century to wear straightened hair.
So let's see if I can touch on all 3 of those points you just made, because they're all so important. First, the risks from using these products. You've mentioned some of them. What are some of the other risks?
So the risk is that when you use the product, it burns on your scalp. And we've normalized the burning sensation that everyone complains about. But the burning of the scalp and the abrasions create an efficient entryway for the chemicals inside of them. And the main ones are, if your relaxer has formaldehyde in it, your straightener, then that is a known carcinogen. And then also the endocrine disruptors that cause early puberty and can lead to different kinds of cancers, uterine, breast cancer, which Black women tend to get a more aggressive, fast-moving, more deadly form of it, and ovarian cancer, as well as fibroid tumors.
Let's bundle the last 2 questions together. You mentioned the FDA and the cultural pressures. Can you go through those both very quickly at the end here?
Well, let me start with the FDA. I was surprised that the FDA only restricts or bans 9 chemicals. And the European Union restricts or bans 1,300. I actually thought it was a mistake. I was misreading. So that means that there's lax oversight over these products, cosmetics in general. But the ones that have the strongest chemicals are the ones that Black women and girls tend to use and are marketed aggressively toward us. And then the other thing is Black women have long been pressured into having straight hair as the expectation, that because it seems more professional, or it looks more professional, and it matters to your job and to your career.
Linda Vivros, excellent reporting, and we're very grateful you're with us. Thanks so much, Linda.
Thank you.
Still to come, NASA makes a surprising discovery on Mars. What's so special about this boulder, and how the space agency stumbled upon it? That's ahead. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now. We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are. Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was gonna be born, he was only gonna live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The United States has halted inspections of avocados and mangoes in the Mexican state of Michoacan after the attack and detainment of 2 U.S. Department of Agriculture employees. Officials say the workers were recently attacked while carrying out their work inspecting avocados and have since been released. The inspections will be suspended until the safety issues have been resolved. Mexico supplies around 80% of the avocados eaten here in the United States. NASA says its Mars rover has made an unprecedented discovery on the red planet. The Perseverance is canvassing Mars for evidence life once existed there. During its recent campaign, it came across this light-toned boulder in a dried-up river delta. NASA says the rock is the first of its kind to be found on Mars. It was found by complete happenstance while the rover took a detour to avoid rough terrain. Scientists are keen to learn about the makeup of Mars to see if it's possible if humans could ever survive on the planet. The Boston Celtics secured a record 18th NBA championship with a Game 5 victory over the Dallas Mavericks Monday night. The Celtics were led by Jaylen Brown, who was awarded the Finals MVP for his efforts. But the real MVP, according to a Wall Street Journal analysis, was math. That's because the Celtics offense consistently hunted for the best possible shot, the open three-pointer, even when it took the ball out of their stars' hands. Then on defense, they forced opponents to take low percentage shots throughout the season. This led Boston to outscore teams by 11.3 points per 100 possessions throughout the season, the third best figure in league history. Here's a look at some of the stories we're covering in our next hour. President Biden unveils a new proposal offering protections for migrant spouses of American citizens. We'll explain the new policy and the potential legal setbacks. Plus, Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu is accusing the United States of withholding weapons. The U.S. says otherwise. We'll tell you how the White House is responding to the claims. And the CEO of Boeing faced tough questions on Capitol Hill as another whistleblower comes forward with concerns about the company's safety practice. We have key takeaways from the hearing. You're streaming CBS News.